After reading 7 of his books in 2023, it is safe to say that Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite authors of all time now. Welcome to the BookTube channel, Jack in the Book Stack, where I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. And I swear, I read a variety of things. I don't just read Brandon Sanderson, but I am in my Brandon Sanderson era, as evidenced by the playlist I have dedicated to him, linked down below. I have reading vlogs of so many of my experiences with his works this year, and it's been interesting. So in this reading vlog, I want to try another one of his secret projects. This is secret project number 3, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. All I know about this one going into it is that this was a project dedicated to his wife. It's supposed to be more of a romance than he typically highlights in his other works. And I have seen rave reviews about it. People are saying like this is their favorite, if not of the secret projects, like their favorite of all of his works. It's raved about. So I'm so excited to experience this for myself. I made it to page 65 of Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, which means I've finished part 1 of the book. So far, we have met our 2 main characters, starting with Yumi, who appears to be some kind of a priestess who follows a lot of rituals in her life. And she's kind of wondering if this is what her life is going to be. And then we have a character who goes by the name Painter, and he has a very interesting job. My initial impression so far is that I love the magic system that we're being introduced to in this world. So starting with Yumi, I mentioned she's a priestess, and she travels between these little kingdoms, and she does like an artistic performance in front of the people in that village or that area, and these spirits come to watch her perform. They show themselves, and when they do, she can ask each spirit to do something on behalf of one of the people in the village. So they come to her asking for light or water or whatever, and she can ask that of the spirit. The spirit goes with that villager and carries out the wish. So she is very much respected in her role, and that seems pretty cool. And then we have Painter. He is one of several, and they are in charge of keeping the people safe in this kingdom, because I don't know if it really is a kingdom yet, but this population of people. And he roams the streets at night, and he looks for nightmares. And it's really interesting how these things are described and how they start off as weak, but the more nightmares they consume, they become more powerful. So he wants to catch them when they're a little bit younger and weaker. How he catches them is he looks at them and sees what they resemble, and he takes out all his materials and he starts to paint a picture. And I think the nightmare gets like absorbed into this painting. So that's a really interesting concept. And then it's gone. It can't hurt anybody. It can't feed off people's dreams anymore. So very, very important job for him too. And he's out and about one night, he's off the clock, and he sees this very, very strong nightmare trying to prey on this little like 4-year-old boy. And he attempts to save the boy, but this nightmare is much stronger than Painter typically handles. So very interesting. At the very tail end of part 1, I think Yumi and Painter are going to meet. It was like a cliffhanger section, so I'm excited to keep reading with it. I do know that this is supposed to be a romance, so I'm assuming, based on the cover, the romance is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I mean, the title kind of spoils that for us, but they haven't met yet, so I can't speak to the romance. I really think that this magic is super, super creative, and I am very excited to keep reading. So I am in progress reading part 3 of Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and I'm having some difficulties. I think my issue is with Yumi. I just find her incredibly judgmental and stubborn and overall unpleasant. And I think everything going on in her POV, let's say, is not really engaging me. I like everything in Painter's POV. I'm very interested what's going on in his life with like the nightmares and everything. This did take much more of a sci-fi spin than I expected it to, which also might be contributing to how sluggish I am with reading this. Like, I don't want to pick it up. I don't want to spend time with it. I want to watch reality TV. So, I don't know. I'm gonna keep going. I'm sure I'll get through it. I'm sure it's just our characters that need to go through some growth and finding themselves, but it feels a little bit difficult right now. I really like this part on page 296 where Painter is talking to Yumi about his career, like his education and then going out into the real world. So he says, then you go into the real world and find it's hard to be creative like that every moment. You realize they didn't teach you important things like how to work when you don't feel passion or when the whims of creativity aren't striking you. What then? What good is theory when you need to feed yourself? I don't know, something about that just seems really relatable, like how we have to work even though we don't always feel like it. We're back now that I have finished Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and I didn't want to tell you too much about the plot at my check-in because I didn't know what might be a spoiler, and I want to keep this video and this review spoiler-free. But now that I know more about it, let me tell you a little bit more about the plot. So I mentioned at my check-in that our characters had just met for the first time. Now what happens with the plot is that they are somehow connected, somehow stuck together. And Yumi thinks it's because the spirits that she normally speaks to, they are in trouble. They're asking for help. And so she knows that Painter is supposed to help her in some way, but they don't know exactly what they're supposed to do. They don't know what the problem is. They're just stuck together. And most of this book is just them like experiencing each other's worlds, like trying to figure out what the point of anything is. For the plot, I do feel like it dragged on in that regard. I was kind of getting a little bit frustrated, wondering when things would move forward. And when I read a book, I'm really in the moment. I'm not one to kind of think what's going to happen next. It's really easy to surprise me because I'm just like, I'm in the moment. I'm not trying to solve the mystery or anything. But there were so many things that happened in this where I'm like, are we just going to ignore that groundbreaking information or experience that we just went through? Because that kind of tells you what's going on here. And I felt like they were just ignoring it. And so I felt really, really frustrated at times with the plot because it was slow moving and I felt like if I can figure this out, guys, if Jack in the book stack knows what's going on and you don't, like, it's kind of frustrating. What really worked for me in this book, though, was the writing style. I loved the narration of this, which added that signature Brandon Sanderson humor and levity to the story. And we learned pretty early on who the narrator is, but I love their commentary. And you don't find out until more towards the end why they're the narrator and why they're in the predicament that they are. So like, if you're kind of wondering, if you're reading it and you're wondering like, WTH is going on with this narrator, you find out. But that writing style really adds so much to it for me. I love this perspective of this narrator describing what's going on to us. Very, very fascinating. For the characters, okay, Yumi did grow on me a little bit. I was right. We just had to go through her journey with her. So she started off as judgmental and condescending and controlling and miserable. But it's just because that's what she knows. Like, she has a very routine life. And so she's uncomfortable with things outside of that because she finds great purpose in her life and her routine. And she is uncomfortable with the idea of shaking it up. And the benefit that these two bring to each other What Yumi learns from Painter is the freedom of choice and being able to decide for yourself and look at your passions, and it's okay to pursue things that make you happy. And then what Painter gets from Yumi, I think, is a sense of purpose and inspiration, finding himself again. As he's painting against these nightmares, he always paints bamboo, the same thing over and over, even though he used to really love being an artist and find joy in his work. And so that inspiration for joy again in his art is, I think, what she brings to him, as well as overall improving his life, you know, because they're both very lonely, isolated people, and so they find that companionship in each other. As far as the magic and the world building, from page 1 I was pretty confused. I was pretty overwhelmed. But I think as a reader you're supposed to be, because Yumi and Painter are trying to figure out why they are connected, why they can't escape each other, and they are both used to very, very different things. Yumi is very basic. She doesn't have technology. She's not used to these modern day things, although she is accustomed to magic, like floating trees. And then on the other hand, Painter is used to technology, television, hot showers, but also these nightmares that he is employed to chase down and dispose of before they get dangerous. So they both have some magic in their world, and then technology plays a part in it because they're both used to different things. So you're trying to figure that out along with them, why they are connected. And again, they don't know why they're connected. They don't know what problem they're trying to solve. There's all these assumptions or guesses with things going on in each of their lives. They're like, oh, that might be it. That might be why we're connected. And this might be what you bring to the table. Lots of different magical things that it could be. So it did feel overwhelming at times and chaotic, and not my favorite magic system of Mr. Brandon Sanderson. That covers the plot, the writing style, the characters, and the magic system or the world building. Now for my overall reaction to this book. I think that it is a fantastic recommendation for fans of science fiction or sci-fi. Now, to me, what I define as sci-fi, or what's sci-fi to me, not saying that this is what the book is, but just the genre of sci-fi, I think of like spaceships, space travel, space setting. I think of unique weapons and technology that's very different, very advanced, something we don't have today. I think of multi-dimensional travel, time travel. I think of portals to other worlds. Those are things in my mind that are sci-fi. And so that being said, in the general sense, this was very sci-fi, and I do not like sci-fi. So I did not enjoy the reading experience. This is a book that I can really appreciate for what it is, for what it set out to do, and I absolutely recognize there is an audience for it. Jack in the Book Stack is not one. And I was hoping there would be like a little bit more romance, like romantasy with this, although I knew it wouldn't be like spicy because Brandon Sanderson doesn't do spice. Very, very conservative. And so I knew there would be no spice, but the romance, I could see the value they add to each other's lives, but the chemistry, I'm just like, meh, like lukewarm. I can see where they're friends because of the value they add to each other's lives, but I'm not really rooting for the romance here. So I picked it up for like romance. It didn't deliver for that. It really delivered in sci-fi, and I don't like sci-fi. So I did not enjoy this book. I think I'm probably still gonna rate it 3 stars though. Because that's kind of like my baseline, like an average. Every book starts out to me as a 3-star rating and goes up and down for enjoyment. And this is a situation where my enjoyment of it was probably a 2-star. But for how it was written, what it did, it was probably like a 4-star. So I'm gonna average it out to 3, if that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, well, it doesn't really have to. It's my video. It's my reading vlog. That's what I want to do. But hey, they can't all be wins, right? With all the Brandon Sanderson books that I've read, there has to be a bottom of the list, and we just found it. This is my least favorite Sanderson that I've read. But not because it's a bad book, just because it's not my personal thing. And I did learn a lot more about the Cosmere in this. So the Cosmere does appear to be this like universe, and each like planet is its own world, because like Tress of the Emerald Sea, where their ocean is not made of water, that's not this world, right? So different realities and different worlds in this universe. So I need to set my expectations for more sci-fi-ness. Now, when I was reading Mistborn Era 1 and Era 2, I did get a sense of that as well, this like Cosmere universe. And so it had like a dash of sci-fi, but this one, it was just so much more. So much more. Sci-fi-ness, it was just not for me. But that's it. I read it. It was a book. It was a Brandon Sanderson book, and he is now the second most read author that I've read in 2023. Next to Deanna Raybourn, because I read her entire Veronica Speedwell series this year. Much shorter books, so it's not even a really fair comparison. Like, I've definitely read more pages and more words written by this man, and it's been quite the journey. So thank you so much for hanging out with me in this reading vlog. Be sure to check out my Brandon Sanderson playlist, linked down below, and I will see you in the next video.